What's popping? What's cracking? What's going on? What's up? I wanted to talk about kind of gatekeeping topics, sort of. Versus it's kind of a lefty and a righty thing. Like I tend to see that both the lefties and righties do a lot of the same shit, just with different base values. And then it's usually not a core value, but it's a base value, like a level up, and then they build down and up from those positions. Like, lefties would be like, LGBT people need to be protected at all costs, and then they build their logic to whatever base logic you need to get there, and whatever comes from that has to be accepted. So if that means saying that there's no women's sports shouldn't exclude people with some sort of advantage, because if you're a trans woman you do have on average a biological advantage in sports, that should be ignored, then so be it, because again the goal is to protect LGBT people and give them equal rights, or whatever is seen as equal rights. That's accepted, right? And if whatever you have to do to justify that, because all humans deserve equal opportunities, is like you'll build that bottom value that you got to the protecting LGBT people from your middle position. So like it's not like I have a core value and then I build everything out from there. It seems like from the left, like we have some values that have been placed onto us, like abortion is good, so let's find out what logic we have to use to justify abortion being good for that. So again, also, this being said, I'm a lefty who thinks abortion is good and who is an ally and advocate of trans people. I don't know how you do the trans sports thing, because it does seem that there is an advantage, and then hormone therapy, even over extended period of time, doesn't really do as much, still doesn't bring you down to the level of the average cis female athlete. I don't know what you do about that, but like that's a real issue. Like I'm at least willing to say that I don't know how you handle some of these issues. I'm willing to say, like, although I'm pro-abortion, I think there's a reasonable argument for saying like that, for viewing it as taking away the right of a embryo or a fetus. Like I can understand that at least, but many people on the left will be like, it's just a clump of cells, and I think that's a way too simple way of viewing it. But on the right side, Jesus, a little too many examples, but you're going from the position that like you should have the freedom to say and do what you want. You shouldn't have to have compelled speech, is kind of thing. Like a Jordan Peterson quote, like, you should be able to say and do what you say and do. It's a free country. You should be able to say and do what you want. Free speech, right? Even if that the thing is, the consequence of that statement is then you should be able to say literally anything. Of course, hateful speech, cool, that's just bullying. Who cares if you say slurs? Who cares if you say people should die? Even though if you accept that bullying, it can lead to suicide rates, whatever, man, people just gotta be tougher. This also includes a violent rhetoric inciting mobs in BLM protests. That should be allowed. Saying violent things in this country, saying terrorist-like rhetoric should be allowed, because that is free speech. If you say, like, I am going to insert violent crime to insert political office, member, or building, that is free speech. That should be allowed. And if you would explain how to do those things when you're going to do it, technically that should be free speech. But you'll have to edit that value, but you won't change your value of free speech needs to be allowed. I'm like, no, well, that doesn't count as free speech, right? So to change that, what is the core thing you're protecting? Like, free speech has a value of allowing people to live a life. So in my opinion, like, free speech is a tool to protect human life. It's not like the core value for me. But for people on the right, it is a core value. Having a gun is a core value. But for me, having a gun is useful in means as how does it protect human lives, especially against other people who already have guns. Even though evidence bears out that most of the time a gun is used to hurt yourself, be a suicide, like a lot of the male suicide, the highest, the white men committing suicide is the highest group of suicide. I'm pretty sure. I don't know where it competes with trans people, but the they commit suicide very frequently. It's usually with the guns that they're very easily allowed to purchase, right? Like having even the 30-day wait time decreases a lot of deaths, areas where you have a 30-day wait time to purchase a gun, just because often you probably got it to kill yourself or kill someone who didn't deserve it, right? In most of the black market guns are just legally purchased guns sold to somebody else, because there's not much it's not like tracking that you can do very easily on it until a crime has been committed with said gun, right? The the greater point is like with, I'm trying to pick examples that are easy enough to understand for both sides, right? So like we all have dealt with gun issues, we've all dealt with abortion issues. You know, we could go into more niche things about like, you know, red pill dating ideology, where it's just like a man, not, was that maybe black pill? Well, one of the pill ideologies is almost instituting that a man deserves to have a romantic and sexual partner. But if they deserve to have that, then necessarily a female has to be subservient to a man getting, to whatever those man's needs are. Like someone has to fill that role whether they want to or not. Now in a perfect world, they would want to, right? But it isn't a perfect world. So assuming there are women that don't want that, there are going to be men to get what they deserve, their right to have a partner, must take away the right to not be someone's partner, right? Like that's a more extreme example. You may not have heard of people, and you probably just have to go on more, spend more time on Reddit. But look up men being, should the government legally mandate wives or partners or whatnot? Like there's some people talking about it. I don't know what pill that is, but like again, it's a real thing. Like, and if you didn't think like these are wild position. That's a wild position to have, right? But the main problem is here. I wanted to mention all of that. I'm like, we all have bad ways of building. So I think my main point is actually something else. But like, it's an interesting thing. Like, I feel like one of the issues, we're not building from core values or that are more fundamental. And there's going to be an issue. You're not going to have a perfectly fundamental value, because you're always going to run into, when dealing with other people who have different values, you're going to have disagreements, right? But it seems like there's a little bit, it's a couple steps down from a core value of what they're building from. And then they're changing their core values based on their, whatever you picked up from the internet. I mean, you lefties, you pick up like, well, what did Hassan say last? I guess that's my position, kind of. Another interesting thing is the whole like gatekeeping of, I was supposed to be talking about this the entire time, but I thought the other thing was interesting. Gatekeeping of your position because you're not in a certain group, or blocking out your position because you're in a certain group. Like, some people may say white people aren't allowed to talk about racial issues, or their opinion doesn't matter unless they're agreeing with the nearest black person, because they're not black. They don't have the experience to count that. And there may be the other position of saying, look, you might be too blinded. You're too biased by the fact that you are black. You're too deep in the trenches to actually see. You've got tunnel vision, right? And I do think there's merits to both of those things. Like, I think necessarily there has to be merits to both of those things, because I mean, you can find evidence to back both of those up. I mean, if you've never, for one, I think with the lived black experience, if you grew up in a predominantly black area, you probably have a pretty good ability to tell what the black lived experience is. Even if it's not happening to you, you can at least see it. You still may not know what it feels like exactly, but the average white person growing up in the Hollows, you guys don't know where the Hollows is, most of you aren't from Bridgeport. What's a good, in fucking Detroit or parts of Chicago or Philly, right? You guys know the average white person growing up in the ghettos of those areas has a much better ability to understand the lived black experience than a black person growing up in fucking Beverly Hills, fucking parts of Long Island, like the really nice parts. I don't know what the bad parts are. There's really bad parts of Long Island I've been, actually. Pick your really white place, Greenwich in Connecticut, or, you know, like pick wherever. Like, living in those impoverished communities is more telling of what the black experience is than being black not in a black community. Now, there's still racism that you'll experience being black in a nice area, especially in like a private school, with a predominantly white private school. They be racist. I see they be fucking these kids up. They be saying some wild shit. However, there's also racism that white could experience in predominantly black neighborhoods or whatnot. And he doesn't get the daddy's money to free him out of some certain situations. The cops probably are less likely to pick on him than whatever black person nearby. That's still true. But a lot of, most of the racial prejudice you deal with are from your social factors more than your institutional. And a lot of leftists won't agree with me on that. So it's like that's just one example. And I think this spreads out to like LGBT issues too. Like, I spent a lot of time researching, studying, and arguing and debating LGBT issues. I'm a cis, straight, male, right? based on some people's logic, my opinion shouldn't have value until they hear me talk about it and be like, oh, actually, I like what you're saying. You're saying things that help gay people and trans people, so you can talk. But like, that's kind of concerning, because if somebody hears that, well, because you disagree with me, your opinion actually was always invalid because you're not even part of our group. I was like, okay, well, I don't give a shit about your opinion, right? And that will be the same thing that happens with, with white people that don't care about black issues. Often will be like, look, I mean, the way that they got annoyed with the N-word back in the day, like, remember there was a news anchor, was it news anchor? It was some TV show, some white guys complaining about about how the N-word is a horrible word, it's a bad word, but black people say it all the time. And then this black actor was just like, well, say it then, say it. It's like, I'm not gonna. It's like, I'm telling you, you could say it, you could do it. It's an area where it's like, being left out, and again, it's some baby shit, being left out stops their ability to sympathize with certain points. In a perfect world, if the in-group has enough knowledge, you should probably just listen to the in-group. But there might be people of the out-group that have useful knowledge too. I think there's collaboration that's valuable. I mean, for one, when I be going playing basketball, usually in LA Fitness, it's a pretty nice area. But it's still basketball, so you still get all of the black people from that nearby area to play. There's a lot of white people that'll play too, a lot of Asian people that'll play too. And we have, there's a community that forms that's still surrounding around a predominantly black cultural thing, right? The white people are still there enjoying and we're talking about issues, and they're adding useful input because they can see an outside perspective, right? If you grow up in black communities in like the 90s and 80s, you think necessarily cops are racist. Necessarily. That is like, hey, would you like to be a police officer? And it's like, yes, I would. How many black people have you punched in the face this week? It's like, only 3? I'm sorry, you're gonna have to increase those numbers because we are racist here at the police departments. But like, that's not necessarily true, but from an outside perspective, you might be able to add like, hey, look, here are examples of cops not being racist. Now, do you feel really good if in your lived experience 10% of cops aren't racist? Probably not. I think you probably still feel pretty comfortable calling cops racist. I don't think they generally are. My personal experience, every cop that I have dealt with besides one has been really, really chill, really nice. I had this car. I was driving it. I think I hadn't paid a toll, and apparently that my insurance the registration and insurance, something goes on with my registration. I think that canceled my insurance, and something was wrong with my, my insurance, I didn't pay my insurance, that canceled my registration, I didn't pay a toll, and that canceled my license. I was driving with 2 of these things. 3 times cops had let me go. 1 time the cops didn't, but they were super nice about it the whole time. They were super chill. This was all within within a year. Like, most of the time, cops have been really nice to me. But that's just my personal experience. Like, if 40 cops haven't done their job, but then the one cop shoots and kills me, I think my family would still be reasonably vindicated, being like, what the fuck is wrong with those cops? Especially knowing me, I don't want to do anything that would justify a cop being killed. So I get the biased position, but sometimes you need an outside perspective. Like, I would be the out group from people who have only been abused by cops. I'm an out group when talking about LGBT issues, but I mean, my brother might disagree with me, but with even within my own family, actually, I don't know, one of my sisters might not be. 2 of my family members are out as, one is gay, one is bi, of my biological family. And for one, in my talking to my older family members, I'm the one who's always arguing on behalf of LGBT, because they're Christian, so I'm always arguing against their Christian values or whatnot on behalf of, why it's not immoral to be gay. I would be arguing in school, and I go, frequently, of my family, I'd be the one most frequently arguing for LGBT rights among peers and among family. I'm not the gay one. I just think it seems morally, for one, hearing about black rights and how we argue for them, that's kind of one of the reasons, right? So I'm like, okay, well, the logic that I use to justify blacks seemingly needing to deserve the same experiences on life as every other race, that to me, it still applies to LGBT people and gay people. The gay stuff was a little bit easier because there's just you just want to marry a dude, and that's it. You just want to be able to kiss a dude on TV and not be burned at the stake for being an Antichrist. It doesn't seem like you're asking for that much. Trans issues become slightly more complicated because people are more confused about it slightly. And again, mostly sports is the main thing that I'm like, yeah. Everything else, I'm like, come on, guys, get the fuck over it. But it's issues like, it's things like that where it's my whole point is maybe we should be, again, to people on the right, don't assume that I'm biased because I am in a group. There may be logic that I'm using just for my points. Like, don't hear my logic and say that might be a good point, but I know he's biased, so I should devalue that point. To people on the left, don't hear someone say, okay, that might be a good point, but I know he's biased because he's not in this group. That's really all. If you like what you saw, leave a like, do a subscribe, do a crime. I'm just kidding, don't do a crime, and I'm out.